Okay, so here's a quick online lesson for you. A couple things, I hate to say typical things, but they're fairly typical for most players that are working to improve their game, and that is a shot pattern that tends to start left and then either pull, essentially be a pull, or a shot that starts left and fades back into the fairway. So when I was looking at your swing, a couple things stood out right away. Address position looked pretty good. It looked like the grip was relatively neutral. You can play with really any grip, but that one looked relatively neutral. Stance looked okay, all those kinds of things. Right out of the gate, though, in your backswing, it looked as though your initial move was to roll the face to sort of a toe-up position and do it almost immediately in your backswing. And I think you used to have kind of a strong grip. And so what can happen when people try to change their grip and go from a strong grip to a more neutral grip with the thumb more sort of towards the center, going down at 1 o'clock if this were a clock face, is what happens is that your hands try to seek out where they used to be. And so what will happen is right in the beginning of your swing is that you'll have this neutral grip, and then immediately you'll strengthen it kind of right away. And next thing you know, you've got this face kind of open in the very early parts of your swing. And what that does, when the face rolls open, the elbows start to spread apart. So the face goes open, the elbows sort of spread apart, and you get this kind of cupping look in your left wrist at the top. And so the rest of your move looks pretty good. Realistically, the hips, or the shoulders and the arms sort of moved in a nice sort of inward movement like that. But with the hands sort of seeking this sort of old, strong grip position, that if you're trying to get back to where you were, so immediately you turn your hands, and now you get the face toe up, and at the top, the toe is really hanging down at the top, kind of like that, with the elbows kind of spread apart. The other piece, and this may be even more important, is how your hips moved. And so right away in your backswing, what I noticed is when I drew a line on your right hip, immediately in your backswing, as you sort of rolled the face and took it back, your right hip and everything shifted and started to push on that line and get outside of the line that I drew on the computer. And so what that does is, a lot of times people are told to get behind it and turn behind it, all those kinds of things. And when the right hip moves up that way, you're in a tough position now because A, you've got the face open, and B, you've got the hip outside and slid this way. So what you'll need to do from there, and what you do, is that from there you really spin the lower body, spin the upper body. The hips never go that way at all. They just kind of spin out. The face starts to work out and over because you're trying to get the face to close again. So you're working the club out and over. Your weight stays back on your right side, and you're sort of rotating this way. And you'll notice as you come through the shot, it's almost like you're kind of chicken wing pulling that arm in because you're back on your right side, pulling inward with the shaft. The face really closes through the ball. So in your swing, it goes from really open, and then you're working really hard to stay back, rotate the face over, square it up, etc. Probably somebody's told you need to release the club better to draw out those kinds of things. All nonsense, unfortunately. So what I would work on you doing is two things. In the backswing, it's important that the club face stays square to this tilted plane, this arc. And so the face has to work back in this manner, and it doesn't work back rotating open in this manner. So when you're swinging back, it's going to feel probably a little shut. It'll probably feel like it's like this, but in reality, it's going to be probably just right on your spine angle, square to this line, this plane line that somebody would draw on a computer. You want it to be perpendicular. The face should be perpendicular to that plane line drawn on the computer. So you want to feel shut. The feeling is your left hand and the face sort of continue to look at the ball going backwards, and this will keep your elbows a little closer together. And at the top, you'll have a much more square face, flatter wrist, square face. The other piece is in the hips. And in the backswing, the feeling that you want to have is that it's as if somebody had their hand right here on your right butt cheek, and in your swing, you want to put their hand in your pocket by turning it behind you. So the feeling is the right hip turns back and behind you. The right hip doesn't go this way. The right hip goes back and behind you. And it almost kind of feels like the right hip kind of works up almost, but it goes up and back. It doesn't go this way at all. So what you will feel is that if somebody put a club or a shaft in the ground next to your right foot, you would turn inside that shaft going back. And then the big piece, really, once you nail this, is once you get that hip to go back instead of going this way, the big piece is that leftward movement of the hip. Because what you see in your swing is immediately you have the slide, and then the left hip and right hip fire this way really hard with all the weight on the right foot. And what you need to have happen is hip goes back, and then from here the left hip needs to move this way, and the legs and the knees and the hips should stay closed. So it will look like this. So the right hip is going to move back, and then from here the hips will shift towards the wall, shift, 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 and look at where the shaft is still pointing. The shaft's still pointing out that way. What you have happen is sort of a slide, and then bam, you want to feel right hip goes deep and back, shift, and then from there the feeling is because you kept the face square. So for backswing thoughts, 2 thoughts for the backswing: face that feels shut, right hip goes deep and back, and then on the downswing it's hips towards the target and keeping everything closed up. Don't let anything open, keep them closed, don't let it pop that way, and you'll see your right foot, instead of doing that, your right foot is going to bank inwards. So you're going to feel right hip goes back and deep, hips move this way, the hips stay closed, hips are pointing out to right field in the downswing, and then you're able to hit the ball with no conscious feeling of release. So it's going to feel almost like when you're shifting through the shot, it's going to feel like the face is open because you want to keep this right wrist bend through the shot. But as you turn through, it's going to turn the corner and the club will release naturally. The club face will stay square to the arc. So that's pretty much it. So I would start with just sort of little shots. Get in your setup position. Concentrate on that right hip back instead of sliding. Face and left hand faces the ball, feels shut. And then from there, moving those hips, but not moving your head forward. So it feels shut and right hip back. Just little swings, hips moving this way with the upper body staying still, and you're going to automatically feel like, wow, there is the inside quadrant that I've been looking for this whole time. You've opened it up now because you've got that right hip deep behind you, not sliding, it's going deep behind you. Face is square, and by sliding and not turning, you now have all this room in front of you to swing the arms down, hit the ball, and the ball should start higher, a little more to the right, and draw from there. So work on those things, hope to help.